Well, here's what it says about Typhon. Typhon is an elemental creature and the biggest monster in Greek history, mythology, history actually. Because of this, he is indestructible, cannot be killed or destroyed. However, Zeus eventually defeats Typhon by trapping him under Mount Etna. Well, I can see him laying in the desert. So a lot of this stuff, it appears to be true, but there's variations of it that I don't accept because I can see Typhon. I can see him in the desert. I've shown him 100 times, 1,000 times. This is a source of contention. Typhon, though, is immortal in both Greek mythology and in comic books. Oh, man. All right, this is Ovid. He wrote at the time of Julius Caesar, was right just around the time of Christ. Now, he had 15 books, and he did comprise and consolidated 250 mythology stories, and wrote 15 books. It totaled almost 12,000 lines of text. And here's the books. He starts right off with the creation, ages of mankind, the flood, Deucalion, who was Noah. And he goes all the way down through Hercules and all of them, which was all of the things that were written in these ancient myth stories. Now, here's how he starts his whole work, which was as well read as the Bible at that point in time. Now, it says Metamorphases, which is a change from like a chrysalis into a butterfly. Now, Metamorphosis is a transformation, is the underlying theme amongst the episodes of Metamorphosis. Transformation. Ovid raises it explicitly in the opening lines of the whole story. He comes out and he says, "In nova fert animus mutatus dicere formos corpora," which means, I intend to speak of forms changed into new entities. Forms changed into new entities. Accompanying this theme is often violence inflicted upon a victim whose transformation becomes part of the natural landscape. He says in the first words of his, he says, they could transform themselves into anything, literally anything they wanted. Somewhere down here it talks about, hold on. Here it is right here. There's a great variety among the types of transformations taking place. They can go from human to inanimate objects like the Nile River or constellations or animals or plants into animals and fungi, into mushrooms, into humans. They could change from one sex to another, from one color to another, and become pebbles. They could do anything they wanted. They were in control of those two little white and black particles. So they could reform them into anything they wanted as gods. And that's why Medusa, just by looking at you, could reform you into a piece of stone. They had incredible powers, basically. You know, there are things that I can literally prove that are not correct in the ancient texts, which is what they had written back in those days. And here's what it said. Here's what we're saying now. Typhon is a creature, biggest monster in Greek mythology, and that's true. Because of this, he is indestructible, he cannot be killed or destroyed. Now then they say, Zeus defeated Typhon by cutting his throat with his great and mighty sword and then trapping him under Mount Etna in Greece for eternity. Now that is not true, because I can show you Typhon, and I also can show you that he was not understood in the early BC times as to what he actually looked like, because he did not have the head of a human. He had the head of a dragon. He had thighs of a human. That's the only thing he had that was human. All right, so even back when they were making these pottery images, they didn't realize that he did not have the upper body of a human. This is Zeus throwing his thunderbolt, killing Typhon. He had the coils of a viper in the bottom, and they said his thighs were of human shape. Now I'm going to read to you what was written by Hesiod about Typhon. All right, this is from Hesiod, and or Hesiod, however you want to pronounce it, but he was actually told to write this by the daughters of Zeus. All right, so the muses of the Olympus, daughters of Zeus. Zeus holds the aegis. He's the owner of the universe at this point. They said to him, shepherds of the wilderness, wretched things of shame, mere bellies. We know how to speak many false things as though they were true, but we know when we will to utter true things. And here's what happened. So the ready-voiced daughters of great Zeus plucked and gave me a rod, a shoot of sturdy laurel, a marvelous thing, and breathed into me a divine voice to celebrate things that shall be and things that were aforetime. And they bade me sing of the race of the blessed gods that are eternal, but ever to sing of themselves, both first and last. They seem pretty proud. But why all this about oak or stone? What they wanted was him to write the whole history up until the point of their father Zeus and what he did to secure conformity in the solar system. So if you don't know the story, Zeus overthrew his father. All right? Here's what it says here somewhere around. They went to Olympus, delighting in their sweet voice. These are the muses, heavenly songs, and the dark earth resounded about them as they chanted. A lovely sound rose up beneath their feet as they went to their father, who was Zeus. He was reigning in heaven, himself holding the lightning and glowing thunderbolt. That's the aegis, I believe. When he had overcome by might his father Kronos, and he distributed fairly to the immortals their portions and declared their privileges. So at that point, he set out the order of the solar system or of the universe or whatever, and because they all helped him to attack Kronos, and he became the leader, Jupiter. But then, well, I believe Kronos was Saturn, and Saturn was bigger, literally bigger physically than Jupiter. But Jupiter, who was Zeus, attacked Saturn, who was Kronos. And that's why you have the rings around Saturn, because that's all the part of his body that was smashed to bits. And he's still very big compared to Earth, 95 times bigger than Earth. Jupiter's like 300 times bigger than Earth. But at one time, I believe Saturn was a little bit bigger than Jupiter and had control. He was the father. And then they killed him and beat him up, and that's all that stuff is floating through the solar system here, and all the rings of Saturn surround it, and that's where its body ended up being. It's just particulates surrounding, still a good-sized inner core, but at one time it was all one big body, main tough body, and now it's all fractured. Now this is pretty detailed. We're going to come down to Typhon. All right, let's come down here to Typhon. All right. This is Typhon, whatever you want to call him. When Zeus had driven the Titans from heaven, huge earth bare her youngest child, Typhon. Between her and Tartarus, Earth had sex with Tartarus. And here's the bottom line. Zeus leaped from Olympus and struck Typhon, and burned all the marvelous heads of the monsters about him. He had 50 heads. He chopped them all off and burned them off. But when Zeus had conquered him and lashed him with strokes, Typhon was hurled down a maimed wreck, so that the huge earth groaned when he hit. This thing's like 1,200 miles long. And flame shot forth from the thunder-stricken Lord in the dim, rugged glens of the mount when he was smitten. Now, it doesn't talk about putting him under Mount Etna or anything here, or any of that stuff. I don't know. I can see him. Well, you can see him right here. Here he is, right there. That's Typhon, and he fits identical. There is just absolutely no question that's who it is. And he only had the thighs right there of a human. Now, he did have the eyes. Well, here it is right here. Here he is close up. What we're going to see in a minute is this red flashing eye. They talk about that. He had 50 heads coming off his shoulders, so that's way back here. He spit out all kinds of venom at a fish, which was a god that was trying to hide from him. And he got the fish. Now, this is his throat. It comes down. This is his scales. I've shown this so many times that you have to go back and look and see it on some of the older videos, because I can't keep showing it. But this was happened. He was killed and thrown to earth. And that was Typhon. Now let me read to you what they say about him in Apollodorus. Alright, this is a real head shaker, I'll tell you that. This is Apollodorus, and he wrote in about the 2nd century BC, but he compiled everything from Hesiod on down. Now, this is the birth of Zeus all the way down. Let's get down to the War of the Giants and Typhon, 1.6. Alright, now this is talking about the Titans and the Giants and all these, everything that happened, battles in the skies and the matchless bulk of their bodies, invincible might, terrible aspects, darting rocks, throwing burning oaks into the skies, and I mean it was just chaos. No. And then it's just nothing but fighting and burning and killing, and Hercules is shooting everybody with arrows, and Zeus is killing them, and it goes on and on about how Hercules shot him dead with an arrow. The other giants, they were shot dead by Apollo with an arrow in his left eye, and Hercules in his right eye, shot him in his right eye. This one was killed with a thyrosis or whatever that is. Another one was flailed. The skin was used for a shield for her own body. I mean, it's just insanity. Hermes, wearing the helmet of Hades, slew Hephaestus in a fight, and Artemis slew Gratian. The Fates, fighting with Brazer's club, killed Argus and Thoas. The other giants, Zeus smote and destroyed with thunderbolts, and all of them Hercules shot with arrows as they were dying. It required the god and the immortal, which Hercules was partially mortal, and they had to work together to kill these other immortal-ish creatures. Now, so anyway, Zeus killed all of these monsters, but most monsters were the children, literally the children of Earth, and she was enraged. The gods had overcome the giants. Earth was more enraged and had intercourse with Tartarus and brought forth Typhon. This is the dragon. Now listen to this. He was a hybrid between man and beast. All right, but the only part of him that was man was his thighs. In size and strength, he surpassed all the offspring of earth. As far as the thighs go, he was of human shape, and of such prodigious bulk he outtopped all the mountains. His head often brushed the stars. And I don't see why that couldn't be possible. He's 1,200 miles long. The space station, I think, is only 6 miles up above Earth. I'm not sure of that, but I have to look. Wow, was I wrong about that? Space station is 254 miles above the Earth, approximately. I don't know where I came up with 6, but anyway. When it was all over and all the giants were killed and everything, the Earth was just really, really upset and made Typhon, and he was sent to kill the gods. Now, again, his thighs were the only part that was human. Now, from the thighs downward, he had huge coils of vipers, which is, I agree with that. And they were like snaky tentacles. His body was all winged, unkempt. His hair streamed on the wind from his head and cheeks. I agree with that. Fire flashed from his eyes. I agree with that. Such and so great was Typhon, when hurling kindled rocks, he made for the very heavens with hissing and shouts. He was going after the gods, spouting a great jet of fire from his mouth, which we will see. But when the gods saw him rushing at heaven, they made for Egypt in flight. Being pursued, they changed their forms into those of animals, and this was a fish that Titan had got. Now, this is the part I'm not sure I believe. It gets a little crazy here. All right, so Zeus pelted Typhon at a distance with thunderbolts, and at close quarters struck him down with an adamantine sickle. Basically cut his throat, that's what I was led to believe. And as he fled, pursued him closely as far as Mount Cassius, which overhangs Syria. There, seeing the monster sorely wounded, he grappled with him, but Typhon twined around him and gripped him in his coils, wresting the sickle from him, severed the sinews of his hands and feet, that's the tendons, and lifting him on his shoulders, carried him through the sea to Sicilia, and deposited him on arrival in the Corsian cave. Likewise, he put away the sinews, the tendons, and hid them in a bear skin, and he set to guard them by a she-dragon Delphi, who was a half-bestial maiden. But Hermes and Aegeus stole the sinews and fitted them unobserved back to Zeus. Now, I don't know, this gets kind of, but I'm telling you, everything's crazy, but anyway. And having recovered his strength, Zeus suddenly from heaven, riding in a chariot of winged horses, pelted Typhon with thunderbolts, pursued him to a mountain called Cnissus, where the Fates beguiled the fugitive. For he tasted of the ephemeral fruits of persuasion, that he would be strengthened thereby. So being again pursued, he came to Thrace, and in fighting at Mount Haemus, he heaved whole mountains. But when those recoiled on him through the force of the thunderbolt, a stream of blood gushed out of that mountain. And they say that from that circumstance, the mountain was called Haemus. Now, I know where that blood is gushing, but I don't know if it's called Haemus. When they started to flee through the Sicilian Sea, Zeus cast Mount Etna in Sicily upon them. I don't see that as true. This is a huge mountain from which down to this day they say blast fire issue from the thunderbolts that were thrown. So much for this subject. Well, from there down, I'm not 100% with. And then you come to Prometheus. They say that Prometheus was the one who molded men out of water and earth and gave them fire, which Zeus was not happy about. So he had Hephaestus nail Prometheus's body on a mountain where an eagle came down every day and ate the lobes of his liver, and they grew back at night. Finally, Hercules cut him down from there. But this is just insane stuff. It really is. I can't deny that. But when you look at Typhon in the desert, you cannot deny that either. You cannot deny this. And if you do, that's your problem, not mine. Your mind is damaged if you deny that this is real. That's Typhon right there. And there's his red, flared, flashy eye streaming backwards. All right, there's the spit coming down, all the dragon stuff coming down at the fish who was a god and changed itself into an animal, which in this case a fish. Typhon goes all the way across North Africa. It's 1,200 miles long. And these are the thighs of a human. They're very similar to a human thigh. And coming out the bottom of them, swishing all around here. This, even all the way back to here, is the coils of his tentacles. And they actually, this is not dunes. Just take a minute to home in on here. But when we get close, if you know anybody that ever did any leather, or you have any leather products and you have a microscope, you look at it, this is what they look like. These are the little tags where all the leather ties together. And that lets leather do all kinds of things, but it comes back. And this is the skin, basically, of his tentacles. You see that? That's it. That's not sand dunes. Those are not sand dunes, my friends. Those things, and they run all the way, way out here from his legs. And it said it went all the way one side of here to the other. And he's attacking the fish. And here's his unkempt hair streaming all over. There's his throat running all the way down. And here's where his throat was cut. And here's where the gush of blood is coming out. Now, I don't think they call this Mount Haemus. But this was, even up to a couple of years ago, this was nice red blood still coming out of here. Now what's happened, I don't know. But all this was greenery. Very brilliant green. And now the only last spot that's green is right there. All of this was green like that. Something has happened there, my friends. And that is from where his throat was cut. And these are all the dragon scales. See, this is his throat coming all the way down here. That's pretty good armor. And that's a pretty good sized throat. The stuff he could eat from this throat, let me see, how big is that throat? This is one side of the throat, and this is the other. That's 1.36 miles just for his throat. All right, coming down here, 1.36 miles. He could eat a lot of big stuff. And and again, I don't know how he would have fed himself. I have no idea about any of that stuff. This is all runoff, and this is Typhon. And he had 50 heads. Now, they said it was on his shoulders, and they got all burnt off by Zeus. Now, his shoulders would have been up in this area, because his comes down for his body and his legs. So his shoulders would have been up in here. I could never find any heads. But this, maybe some of these little spots are where they were growing out of, like one out of here, maybe one out of here, I don't know. But that's what it said, he cut them off. Now where they fell to, I don't know. But that always, I had a hard time with that, but they could have been growing out everywhere here. There's some crazy looking stuff here, I can tell you that. And that is up in his shoulder area. And here's the back of his tail back here, where there's more dragon scales back here, and the blood is running out from in between the scales. This is a swoop down here, a little swale. He's still got all his dragon scales back here. It runs all the way down to the end of his tail, and his tail flutes right out here at the end. Huge, huge, huge creature. And of course the fish is pretty good size too. I suppose all I can say is if Typhon was really a creature and he was really immortal and he is really here laying in the desert and he was really written about and all those things I believe are true, what does that mean? What does it mean to you or to me or to anybody? Well, to me, it strengthens my belief in Jesus Christ having all that special powers that he had and coming back here to warn us. That strengthens my belief in Jesus Christ. You can take it for any way you want, but he spoke of all of these, and this is not something that just strictly related to Jesus Christ. This was in all the ancient texts about dragons and monsters and giants and battles in the heavens, and every culture, every religion, they all had a very, very, very similar story. So I would like to have somebody explain this to me.